The longship sliced through the icy waters of the fjord, its dragon-headed prow cutting a path toward the blood-red horizon. At its helm stood Brynja Nordensdottir, her auburn hair whipping in the wind, her eyes, as grey and unyielding as the North Sea, fixed on the distant shore. Behind her, 30 warriors awaited her command, their shields lined along the gunwale, spears and axes at the ready. "Land ahead, my queen," called Ulf, her father's oldest friend and most trusted advisor since his passing. "The settlement lies beyond the forest line." Brynja nodded, her hand tightening around the hilt of her sword. Vengeance had driven her across the sea, vengeance for her father King Norden, slain by Saxon treachery while offering peace. 6 moons had passed since she had taken up his crown, 6 moons since she had sworn before the gods that the blood debt would be paid. "Remember," she called to her warriors, "we take only what is owed. The settlement's food stores, their silver, and their pride. But no harm comes to their women or children." Her words were met with murmurs of agreement, some enthusiastic, others reluctant. "A strange mercy from the shield-maiden queen," Ulf remarked quietly as he moved to stand beside her. "Your father would have burned their hall to the ground. And that is why he lies in his burial mound while I stand here," Brynja replied. "Endless vengeance breeds only more vengeance. I will have what we are owed, but I will not feed this blood feud for another generation." Yet even as she spoke the words, doubt gnawed at her heart. The sagas taught that blood must be answered with blood. How could she honor her father without continuing the cycle that had claimed him? This was the weight of the crown she had never wanted, the burden of leadership thrust upon her by the Norns who wove the tapestry of fate. As the ship beached on the shore, Brynja led her warriors through the mist-shrouded forest that separated them from their target. The trees here grew taller than any she had seen before, their ancient trunks wider than 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder. Strange birds called overhead, their songs unlike any in her homeland. The forest seemed to watch them, to breathe around them. "This place is touched by the gods," whispered Thora, the shield maiden who had been Brynja's milk sister. "Can you not feel it?" Brynja could indeed feel something, a presence in the air, a watchfulness that prickled the skin at the nape of her neck. But a warrior queen could not show hesitation. "We press on," she commanded, though she found herself stepping more carefully, her boots avoiding the flowering plants that carpeted the forest floor. The attack was swift and merciless. They fell upon the Saxon settlement as Odin's wolves, taking the defenders by surprise. Brynja fought with the fury of the berserker, though she remained coldly in control, her sword singing as it claimed the lives of those who stood against her. Within an hour, the settlement was theirs. Standing in the central clearing, surrounded by captives and the spoils of victory, Brynja felt hollow rather than triumphant. This was the way of things: raid, plunder, return home to feast and boast, but the satisfaction she had expected eluded her. "Bring the leader to me," she ordered, cleaning her blade on her cloak. The warriors dragged forward a tall Saxon man, his face blooded but his stance proud. He wore no armor, only a simple tunic of undyed wool, yet he carried himself with the dignity of a king. "What manner of chieftain are you?" Brynja asked in the Saxon tongue. "Where is your mail? Your helmet? Your sword?" The man looked up, his eyes the deep blue of a summer sky. "I am no chieftain, Viking. I am Joran Quilsen, healer and guardian of the sacred grove. If you seek our leader, you will find him fled with the best of our warriors." Brynja laughed, a harsh sound that carried across the clearing. "A healer? And what healing will you work now, Saxon, with your homes burning and your people in chains?" Joran met her gaze unflinchingly. "I heal the land as well as the people. And this land will not forgive what you have done here today." Something in his words, or perhaps the way he spoke them, without fear or hatred, gave Brynja pause. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. At first, she thought it an earthshake, but then she saw the roots of the nearest trees writhing, breaking through the soil like serpents. "What trickery is this?" she demanded, raising her sword once more. "No trickery," Joran replied calmly. "The forest speaks. It has chosen this moment to awaken." All around them, the trees seemed to shift, branches bending without wind, leaves rustling in agitation. Birds took flight in massive, swirling flocks. From deeper in the forest came a sound like the groaning of great ships in storm. Brynja's warriors grew uneasy, some making signs to ward off evil. "Queen Brynja," Ulf urged, "we should gather our plunder and return to the ships. This place is not natural." But Brynja stood transfixed. In the shadows between the trees, she thought she glimpsed figures, not human, not animal, but something else entirely. And through it all, she felt a presence pressing against her mind, ancient and powerful, judging her actions and finding them wanting. "Release him," she commanded suddenly, gesturing to Joran. "Release all of them. Return what you have taken." Her warriors stared at her in disbelief. Ulf stepped forward, his face creased with concern. "My queen, have you lost your senses? These are the people whose kin slew your father." "Look around you, Ulf," Brynja said quietly. "We stand on sacred ground. The gods watch us here. Would you have us invite their wrath?" Reluctantly, her warriors obeyed, freeing the captives and returning the stolen goods. As they did so, the forest's agitation seemed to ease, the unnatural movement stilling, though the sense of watchfulness remained. Brynja approached Joran, who rubbed his wrists where the bindings had chafed them. "Your forest protects you well," she said. "But I still have a blood debt to collect. Tell me of the men who killed my father, King Norden, during peace talks last winter." Confusion crossed Joran's face. "King Norden? The Northman who came to broker trade with the coastal settlements." He shook his head. "He was not killed here or by our people. The last we heard, he was traveling south to meet with the lords of Wessex." It was Brynja's turn to be confused. "My father never reached Wessex. His ship returned with his body and tales of Saxon treachery during a peaceful meeting." "Then you were misled," Joran said firmly. "Our people honored your father as a fair man. We mourned when word came of his death. But it was no Saxon hand that struck him down, at least, not from our settlement." Doubt crept into Brynja's mind. Could her father's men have lied? Or were they themselves deceived about who had attacked them? Before she could pursue this troubling thought, a low rumbling shook the forest again. "The forest grows restless once more," Joran said. "You should leave this place, Viking Queen. Take your warriors and go." "I cannot leave until I know the truth," Brynja insisted. "If not your people, then who killed my father?" Joran hesitated, then nodded. "There is one who might know. The guardian of the heart tree, the spirit of the forest itself. I can take you to her, but you must go alone, and you must go in peace." "It could be a trap," Ulf warned when Brynja related her intention. "He leads you into the forest to be killed, and we lose our queen." "If he wished me dead, the forest would have taken me already," Brynja countered. "I must know who truly killed my father before more innocent blood is spilled." She turned to her warriors. "Make camp here. Touch nothing that is not yours. Respect this place as you would a temple of the gods. I will return before nightfall." Joran led her deeper into the forest, following paths that seemed to appear and disappear before her eyes. The further they went, the more alive the forest felt, not in the unsettling way of before, but with a vibrant energy that made her skin tingle. "This forest is ancient," Joran explained as they walked. It remembers the time before men, before the Romans, before even the oldest stones were raised. The trees speak to each other through their roots, and sometimes they speak to us as well. You sound more pagan than Christian, Brynja observed. Joran smiled, a quick flash of warmth that transformed his solemn face. The Christians build their churches and speak of their one God, but the land remembers the old ways. I serve the people by serving the forest first. They came at last to a clearing unlike any Brynja had ever seen. At its center grew a massive oak tree, its trunk wider than her longship, its branches reaching so high that they seemed to touch the clouds. The air here felt different, heavier, charged with invisible power. The heart tree, Joran said reverently. The oldest living thing in these lands. The guardian speaks through it. And how does one speak to a tree? Brynja asked, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice despite the awe she felt. With respect, Joran replied simply. He approached the tree and placed his palm against its bark, closing his eyes. After a moment, he stepped back. She will speak with you. Go forward and place your hands upon the trunk. Open your mind to her presence. Feeling foolish yet strangely compelled, Brynja did as instructed. The rough bark was warm beneath her palms, pulsing like a living heartbeat. She closed her eyes. At first, there was nothing. Then, gradually, images began to form in her mind, a ship on stormy seas, her father standing proud at its helm, and another vessel approaching under the banner of peace, men boarding from the second ship, their faces initially hidden, and then, clear as if she stood upon the deck herself, the glint of a blade and her father falling, betrayal in his eyes as he looked upon his killer, a man with a scar crossing his left eye, a man who wore not Saxon clothing but the distinctive cloak of Jarl Ravnsson. Her father's sworn blood brother and her own council member. Brynja stumbled back from the tree, gasping as if she'd been underwater. Ivar, she whispered. Ivar Ravnsson betrayed him. Joran steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. What did you see? The truth, Brynja said bitterly. My father was killed by one of our own, a man who now sits on my council, who urged me to raid your settlement, who has been directing our vengeance against innocent people. Her hands clenched into fists. I've been a fool, playing into his hands while he consolidates power. The forest does not lie, Joran said softly. But why would this man want your father dead? Power. Wealth. The old reasons. Brynja's mind raced with implications. Ivar's daughter was promised to my father as his second wife, a marriage that would have united our houses. But I opposed it. I saw how she feared my father, how the match was forced upon her. When I became queen, I released her from the betrothal. She laughed humorlessly. I thought I was being merciful. Instead, I removed Ivar's path to the throne. As they spoke, the wind picked up around them, the leaves of the heart tree rustling with unusual intensity. Joran looked up, his expression concerned. We should return to your people, he said urgently. The guardian is warning us. There is danger coming. They hurried back along the winding forest paths, but as they neared the settlement, sounds of conflict reached them, shouts, the clash of weapons, cries of pain. Stay here, Brynja commanded, drawing her sword. This is my home, Joran countered, producing a knife from his belt. I will not hide while it is threatened. Together they crept to the edge of the settlement. What they saw made Brynja's blood run cold. A second group of Vikings had arrived, warriors bearing Jarl Ravnsson's raven banner. They were attacking not the Saxons but Brynja's own men, who fought desperately, outnumbered and caught by surprise. Ivar must have followed us, Brynja realized aloud. He means to eliminate me and blame it on the Saxons, just as he did with my father. What will you do? Joran asked. Brynja's grip tightened on her sword. What a queen must. Fight. She stepped from the forest's edge with a battle cry that stopped the fighting momentarily as all eyes turned to her. Across the bloody ground, she locked eyes with Ivar Ravnsson himself, a tall man with graying red hair and the scar she had seen in her vision. Traitor, she called. Murderer of my father. The gods have shown me your treachery, Ivar Ravnsson. Ivar's face twisted with rage and something else, fear, perhaps, at being discovered. The forest witch queen returns, he shouted to his men. See how she consorts with our enemies. She dishes her father's memory with peace talks and mercy. Is that what you told my father before you struck him down? Brynja advanced, her warriors rallying around her as they saw their queen. Did you speak of honor as you plotted his death? Your father was weak, Ivar spat. He would have had us trade with Christians instead of taking what is rightfully ours by strength. And you are weaker still, girl queen. The throne belongs to those with the courage to claim it. With that, he charged at her, his massive battle axe raised high. Brynja met his attack with her sword, the impact jarring her to her bones. Around them, the battle resumed, Viking fighting Viking while the Saxons retreated to the edges of the conflict. Ivar was strong, but Brynja was quick. She ducked beneath his sweeping axe, her sword finding gaps in his armor, drawing blood with precise strikes. Yet for each wound she inflicted, he seemed to grow more ferocious, his attacks wilder and harder to predict. You fight well, he acknowledged, breathing heavily as they circled each other. But you lack the will to do what must be done. Our people need a ruler who understands power. Our people need peace, Brynja countered. The old ways of endless raiding bring nothing but more death. My father understood that. That's why you killed him. With renewed fury, she attacked, her sword becoming an extension of her arm as she drove Ivar back step by step. But in her determination, she missed the signal he gave to one of his men. Too late, she sensed movement behind her. Pain exploded in her shoulder as a spear pierced her from behind. Brynja staggered, her sword dropping from suddenly numb fingers. Ivar grinned triumphantly, raising his axe for the killing blow. It never fell. With a sound like thunder, the ground beneath their feet heaved. Massive roots erupted from the earth, wrapping around Ivar's legs, climbing his body like serpents. Similar roots captured his warriors, immobilizing them as they cried out in terror. Joran appeared at Brynja's side, supporting her as she swayed. Behind him came other Saxons, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear as they watched the forest itself come to life around them. The Guardian protects its own, Joran said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent clearing. This queen came in vengeance but chose mercy. She sought truth instead of blood. The forest has judged her worthy. Ivar struggled against the living bonds that held him, his face contorted with rage and fear. What witchcraft is this? Release me! I am Jarl Ravnsson, and I will not be, his words cut off as the roots tightened, drawing him inexorably toward the tree line. One by one, his warriors suffered the same fate, dragged into the forest despite their struggles. What will happen to them? Brynja asked weakly, the spear still lodged in her shoulder. The forest will decide, Joran answered. But they will not trouble these lands again. He gestured to two Saxon women. Help me get her to my dwelling. The wound must be treated. Brynja's remaining warriors, those loyal to her, made no move to interfere as the Saxons carried their queen to Joran's home, a simple but spacious dwelling built against the side of a living oak tree. There, Joran carefully removed the spear and treated the wound with herbs and poultices whose scents filled the small space with unfamiliar yet soothing aromas. You have a healer's touch, Brynja murmured as the pain began to subside under his ministrations. As I told you, he replied with a slight smile. Though usually my patients are not quite so royal. Outside, Vikings and Saxons maintained an uneasy peace, both sides too shaken by what they had witnessed to resume hostilities. As night fell, Ulf came to check on his queen. "Your warriors await your command," he told her. "The tide turns tomorrow morning. We should return to our ships and sail for home." Brynja, pale but clear-eyed, sat up from the bed of furs where she had been resting. "And what of Ivar's men? Those the forest did not take." "They have surrendered," Ulf reported. "Without Ivar, they have no stomach for fighting." Most were following orders, not knowing his true plan. Brynja nodded. "Tell them they may return with us, but they will face the Thing's judgment for their part in today's events." She glanced at Joran, who was grinding herbs in a stone mortar. "And tell our people to prepare a feast. We will break bread with the Saxons tonight, not as conquerors but as guests seeking to make amends." Ulf's bushy eyebrows rose in surprise. "A feast? With them?" "This settlement was wrongly attacked based on Ivar's lies," Brynja said firmly. "We owe them compensation, not continued hostility. Go now, see it done." When Ulf had departed, Brynja attempted to stand, wincing as the movement pulled at her wound. "You should rest," Joran advised, moving quickly to steady her. "The herbs will help with healing, but the body needs time." "Queens rarely have the luxury of time," she replied, but allowed him to help her back down. "Your forest saved my life today. I owe it a debt." "The forest acted of its own will," Joran said. "But if you wish to repay any debt, you could start by telling me more about these Vikings who come in peace rather than war." Through the evening, as her strength gradually returned, Brynja told Joran of her homeland, of fjords that cut into the land like the god's own fingers, of winter nights when the sky danced with colored lights, of summer days when the sun never fully set. In turn, he spoke of the forest and its secrets, of ancient rituals performed beneath the heart tree, of the harmony his people sought with the land that sustained them. The feast that night was awkward at first, with Vikings and Saxons regarding each other warily across cooking fires. But as mead and ale flowed, tensions eased. By the time Brynja emerged from Joran's dwelling, moving carefully but determined to show strength, songs were being shared in both languages, and children from both communities played together at the edges of the gathering. Brynja took a seat on a log beside Joran, accepting a horn of mead from Thora. "Your people and mine are not so different," she observed, watching a Saxon woman teach a Viking how to weave a simple basket. "We all seek safety, prosperity, a future for our children. Yet we have fought each other for generations," Joran replied. "Old hatreds are not easily set aside." "Perhaps not," Brynja agreed. "But new understandings can be forged." She turned to face him directly. "I came here seeking vengeance for my father. Instead, I found the truth, and something more." "And what is that something more?" Joran asked, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "A vision of what could be," Brynja said softly. "Vikings and Saxons not as enemies but as allies. Traders instead of raiders. Builders instead of destroyers." "A noble vision," Joran acknowledged. "But can it survive once you return to your homeland, surrounded by jarls who profit from the old ways?" It was a question Brynja had been pondering herself. "Change must start somewhere," she said finally. "My father tried to forge a new path and was killed for it. But his dream did not die with him." She straightened, decision crystallizing. "I will return to face the Thing and expose Ivar's treachery. Those loyal to his house will resist, but with truth and the gods on my side, I will prevail." "And then?" Joran pressed. "And then I will send ships back, not with warriors but with traders. And perhaps... She hesitated, then continued more boldly, perhaps I will return myself, to learn more of this forest and its guardian. Joran smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. The forest would welcome your return, Queen Brynja. As would its guardian. The feast continued late into the night, but eventually, Brynja's wound demanded rest. As she prepared to return to Joran's dwelling, a strange hush fell over the gathering. Turning, Brynja saw a magnificent stag at the edge of the forest, its antlers spanning wider than a man's outstretched arms, its coat gleaming silver in the moonlight. The white stag, Joran breathed, rising to his feet. The Guardian's messenger. It has not been seen in a generation. The stag regarded the gathering with intelligent eyes, then turned its gaze directly on Brynja. A feeling of profound connection washed over her, similar to what she had experienced at the heart tree but even more powerful. In that moment, she understood with absolute clarity that her path and Joran's were meant to intertwine, that the forest had recognized in her something she had not fully recognized in herself. As suddenly as it had appeared, the stag bounded back into the forest, leaving the feast-goers murmuring in awe. What does it mean? Brynja asked Joran quietly. It means the forest has chosen you, he replied, wonder in his voice. In all the years I have served as guardian, I have never seen the white stag show itself to an outsider. The next morning, as Brynja prepared to depart with her warriors, the entire Saxon settlement gathered to bid them farewell. Gifts were exchanged, furs and amber from the Vikings, woven goods, and forest medicines from the Saxons. It was not the raid's plunder Brynja had envisioned, but somehow it felt more valuable. As the longships were loaded and made ready, Brynja sought out Joran one last time. He stood apart from the others, his tall figure silhouetted against the morning sun. The tide calls us home, she said, coming to stand beside him. But I meant what I said last night. I will return. The forest will be watching for you, Joran replied. As will I. He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew a small wooden amulet, carved in the shape of an oak leaf. Wear this. It contains the essence of the heart tree. The forest will know you through it, wherever you may journey. Brynja accepted the gift, slipping the leather cord over her head so that the amulet rested against her heart. In return, I have nothing so magical to offer. But I give you this. She removed a silver arm ring from her wrist, a symbol of her royal status. So that when I return, you will remember that a queen keeps her word. Joran closed his fingers around the arm ring, his eyes never leaving hers. I will remember. Their farewell was brief but charged with unspoken promises. As Brynja's ship pulled away from shore, she stood at the stern, watching Joran's figure grow smaller with distance. The wound in her shoulder throbbed, but a different sensation dominated her awareness, a certainty that she would indeed return, that the path she had discovered in this forest was only beginning to unfold. 3 seasons passed. Brynja returned to her homeland, where she revealed Evor's treachery before the Thing. With the testimony of the warriors who had witnessed the forest's judgment and the support of those loyal to her father's memory, she secured her position as queen and established a new council committed to her vision of trade rather than raiding. It was not an easy transformation. Old ways die hard, and many of her people grumbled at the changes she instituted. But as the first trading expeditions returned with wealth gained through commerce rather than bloodshed, resistance began to soften. When spring came again, Brynja set sail with 3 ships, not longships built for war but broader vessels designed for cargo. This time, when she approached the Saxon shore, no weapons were drawn, no battle lines formed. Instead, Joran stood waiting with his people, a welcome rather than a defense. Their reunion was joyous but dignified, befitting a queen and a guardian meeting in the sight of their people. But later, away from curious eyes, they spoke of all that had passed in their months apart, of the changes they had each worked to bring about, of the future they now dared to imagine together. "The forest has been restless since your departure," Joran told her as they walked the now familiar path to the heart tree. "The Guardian speaks of change coming, not just to our two peoples but to all the lands touched by the sea." "Change is already here," Brynja replied. "My people speak of settlements rather than raids, of towns where Vikings and Saxons might live side by side as they learn from one another." They reached the clearing of the heart tree, its massive presence somehow even more awe-inspiring than Brynja remembered. Without hesitation, she approached and placed her palms against its bark, feeling the immediate connection, the sense of recognition. Images flowed into her mind once more, her people and Joran's building a settlement together at the forest's edge, herself and Joran standing hand in hand before the heart tree, speaking vows as their two peoples bore witness, children, their children, running through the forest without fear, equally at home in both worlds. When she stepped back, tears glistened in her eyes. "The Guardian has shown me what could be," she whispered. Joran moved to stand before her, taking her hands in his. "What did you see?" "A future," Brynja answered simply. "Our future, if we have the courage to claim it." "The forest rarely offers such visions without purpose," Joran said, his voice solemn but his eyes alight with hope. "The Guardian must believe this future is possible." "Do you believe it?" Brynja asked, suddenly vulnerable despite her crown and sword. In answer, Joran drew her closer, one hand gently cupping her face. "I have believed it since the moment you chose mercy over vengeance. The question is, do you?" Brynja thought of her homeland, of the responsibility she bore as queen, of the expectations her people had of her. Then she thought of the vision the heart tree had granted her, not a prophecy set in stone but a possibility that required choice and action to bring into being. "I do," she said firmly. "Not as a queen taking a consort, not as a Viking claiming Saxon land, but as a woman who has found her equal and her home." "Then let us make it so," Joran replied, and sealed their commitment with a kiss. In the summer that followed, beneath the spreading branches of the heart tree, Brynja Nordensdottir and Joran Quilsen joined their lives in a ceremony that honored both their traditions. Vikings and Saxons gathered as witnesses, no longer divided by old hatreds but united in celebration of what their leaders had forged. As Joran placed a crown of oak leaves upon Brynja's brow, the white stag appeared once more at the forest's edge, watching with timeless eyes as a new chapter began, not just for two people but for two peoples, for the ancient forest, and for the future they would build together on foundations of truth, healing, and love that had overcome the blood feuds of the past.